In March of 2018, King's Dominion opened its 13th coaster, Twisted Timbers. Rocky Mountain Construction, also known as RMC, had only built 11 machines prior to Timbers. However, those 11 were game changers, flipping the industry upside down in ways never thought possible. The hype was at an all-time high in Virginia, especially considering it had been 8 years since King's Dominion blessed us with I-305. Just down the road at Busch Gardens, things were silent for 2018. The previous year was Invader, a smaller scale GCI. 2 years before that, Tempesto. And 2012 was Verbolten. Fans wanted a new powerhouse in Virginia, and man did they get it. RMC did what they always do, turning arguably the worst coaster in the park into an overall top 25 machine. On opening day for Twisted Timbers, King's Dominion had arguably the strongest top 3 of any park in the world, especially considering that Steel Vengeance over at Cedar Point had yet to open. That argument was short-lived, however, as just a few months later, Volcano The Blast Coaster would close. For that entire season, rumors swirled it was close to being repaired. Then all the talk was parts needed to be built and shipped. As time passed, it was looking less and less likely that it would open before the season ended. It didn't. February 8, 2019, the speculation was finally over. King's Dominion had made the decision to remove the Blast Coaster. In this industry, these things happen every year. It's just part of the game. And while most ultimately make sense, this one in particular felt like a real punch to the gut. Sure, it had some downtime, but nowhere in the world could you blast out of the top of a volcano. A one-of-a-kind ride experience that took full advantage of that iconic mountain that was King's Dominion. Regardless of that, the park kept true to their word, and in no time, Volcano was gone and that plot of land was leveled. It's been nearly 5 years, and yet still no word on what will replace the beloved Blast Coaster. And that's not the only questions we have for King's Dominion, as everyone continues to talk about Anaconda's future. And what's going on with I-305's long overdue repainting? There are 3 major projects I see coming to the park very soon, all of which I'm going to discuss in this video. Finally, I'll finish things off by showing the 3 coasters that I think could replace Volcano. Rarely do I make a prediction video, however with this being my home park and knowing it inside and out, I really wanted to share my thoughts. This is the uncertain future of King's Dominion. Several years back, I put out a video on Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. In that video, I discussed how it always felt like they were preparing the park for Gwazi versus rushing the project. The competition nearby is strong, and I feel they wanted to win big, repainting so many rides, perfecting new events, and adding tigers beforehand. I get those same vibes when thinking about Volcano's replacement. Think about it, Gwazi closed, and the trains were shipped to Virginia. But the structure stood tall for years before an announcement was made. Now look at Volcano's plot of land. The station was preserved for a reason, yet it appears the plot of land has not been disturbed since the removal. No cleanup or grass planting like we saw at Kings Island when Vortex was destroyed. And we still have a temporary fence around the area. Trust me, the replacement is coming, which we're going to discuss here in a minute. So considering King's Dominion could be preparing the park to take full advantage of this new addition, let's first look at what's been improved since 2019 and what still needs to be done. First off, the food. It's difficult to put into words the progress King's Dominion's made with the food offerings in just a few short years. This park went from being average at best to playing in the big leagues alongside of parks such as Dollywood and Silver Dollar City. I truly believe this. The decision isn't where to eat, it's how do I choose. Just about every spot has a different specialty, and in my opinion, they're all amazing. The suites are also getting better each year. Not quite at the level of the food, but getting better and better. Similar to how Busch Gardens Tampa added tigers to the park just before building Gwazi, King's Dominion announced the S&S Free Spin, both of which take up a very small footprint and give the park a shiny new toy to look at while also buying a little extra time. At first, many were disappointed. More so, I think, because they knew this meant it'd be longer before that true replacement was coming. What none of us knew was that King's Dominion was planning to retheme this section of the park into one of the strongest in the entire Cedar Fair chain. They cut 0 corners when transforming Safari Village into Jungle Expedition. More great food, shows, theme music, and a focus on attention to detail unlike anything we had seen from Cedar Fair of years past. Avalanche was in desperate need of attention. No problem, Reptilian was born. It looks so much better now, and it fits that new area perfect. They built that 4D free spin and named it Toonbilly. Because of that new theme and attention to detail, it's been a massive hit for the park. Work's also been done to the backlot stunt coaster, helping to bring some of the missing effects back to life. This past off-season, extensive work was done to Grizzly. This coaster's been at the park since '82, and while it's always been a solid ride, it had become almost unbearable in recent years, even after attempts were made to improve it. However, before the 23 season kicked off, King's Dominion hired the Gravity Group to save Grizzly. They'd replace over 1,000 foot of track, steepen the drop an extra 10 degrees, and reprofile certain sections. They knocked it out of the park and launched Grizzly near the top of best attractions at King's Dominion. Riding smoother is an understatement. This is like a whole new addition to the park. Tons of smaller changes I didn't mention, as I wanted to focus on more of the major things Cedar Fair brought to the park. No question, King's Dominion has made huge improvements since that 2019 announcement. So how else can the park improve moving forward, and what else needs to be addressed? Well, for starters, Racer 75 desperately needs a new paint job. Recent work also has this running better than ever, and refreshing that paint would do wonders in this beautiful park. How about Anaconda? That seems to be a talking point every year. Will they remove it? Will it live another year? Well, it's in my opinion that Jungle Expedition ultimately saved the Aero Looper, at least for the foreseeable future. Like we discussed earlier, this new section is themed so well, and Anaconda fits perfect into that area. Then there's I-305. So many questions. Is it technically part of Jungle Expedition along with Flight of Fear? Looking at the theme, no, but the map says different. If not now, how about in the future? Will we see this new theme land and attention to detail expand further? It's rare for Cedar Point to have a star attraction in need of a paint job as bad as I-305. And I got a feeling it's all part of the plan. Intimidator 305 was a great name for this coaster, but then they also named the Hyper in Charlotte Intimidator the same year. I-305 makes sense because of the intensity. Charlotte's Hyper also makes sense, but because of its location near the NASCAR Hall of Fame. But it's always been a bit confusing for many, which is why I personally think that I-305 will soon be getting a new paint job, name, and a new theme that fits into Jungle Expedition better than racing. Either way, keeping it the same or retheming it, we definitely need some new paint and more clarity on its placement in this section of the park along with Flight of Fear. I also expect a new theme for Backlot Stunt Coaster, which would help explain the recent focus on working out some of the issues it previously had. And last, before we talk about what could be replacing Volcano, we gotta talk about that second major project that's gotta be getting close. The tolls and parking lot are in desperate need of attention. The entrance is also really starting to show its age. We know this is important at Cedar Fair, as we've seen major improvements at parks such as Kings Island, Carowinds, and Cedar Point. And the parking lot also needs to be repaved badly, and new markings to help when getting out. If I were a betting person, I'd say this is going to happen very soon, along with a new front entrance, one similar to what we saw at Worlds of Fun. Carowinds and Cedar Point also had this work done, but with the addition of a new coaster. I don't think that's in the cards for King's Dominion, just a new entrance and a rebuilt parking lot. I've spent tons of hours trying to predict what Cedar Fair will build to replace this iconic coaster. Looking into who Cedar Fair has been working with and what's at Busch Gardens Williamsburg are the main driving factors here. You can forget the B&M invert and dive machine, as Busch Gardens Williamsburg an hour away. It also seemed likely the B&M Hyper is off the table as well, with Apollo's Chariot still running strong in Williamsburg. However, I'm still not entirely sold on this idea, as these coasters are so well rounded and would give King's Dominion that much needed floater air. RMC I'd imagine is also off the table with the addition of Timbers, and you already have a 300-foot machine next door, so that's not happening. An Intamin would also be amazing, but that's one of those I need to see it before I believe it situations, as I-305 was the last time Cedar Fair worked with Intamin. The park already has 3 wood coasters, so I think that option's out, though not impossible after seeing the overall positive response from Mystic Timbers over at Kings Island. Not my 3 dream coasters, but what I think is most likely. Cedar Fair just announced a new Vekoma at Kings Island for the 2024 season, and this could possibly be the test for working with them in the future. Vekoma has really turned the corner and is building some elite machines. One of these would fit very nicely on Volcano's plot of land. Just look at what Vekoma did with Guardians of the Galaxy at Epcot and Big Bear Mountain at Dollywood. both of which are very exciting rides the entire family could enjoy, which is something I think King's Dominion is missing, even though they have a lot of coasters that have a 48-inch height requirement or lower. Next up is the B&M Wing Coaster. This was rumored to be the replacement early on, but it seemed to lose traction. Though I do wonder if this was due to the park possibly stepping back on that replacement and instead working on the park and adding Toon Billy. While not my first choice, this would be a win for King's Dominion. There are none around and the closest is located in Dollywood. Plus we know Cedar Fair loves to work with B&M. Not to mention, they're very dependable and have great capacity. You could even pay homage to Volcano by launching it, as we've seen with Thunderbird at Holiday World. But for me, the Grand Slam is an extreme spinning coaster by Mach Rides. There's only one in America and it's located all the way at Silver Dollar City in Branson, Missouri. Cedar Fair recently worked with Mach Rides on Copperhead Strike at Carowinds, and that ride's been a huge hit. This would be massive for King's Dominion, especially with all the theme and possibilities right in Jungle X. It would be unlike anything around. Time Traveler is such an enjoyable and comfortable ride. I can't help but to smile every time I'm on it. Yes, it's a big investment, but one I think the park's prepared to make. With the recent news of Dorney Park adding a B&M dive machine, I think it's safe to say that Cedar Fair is not scared of making a big investment. So let's say I happen to predict the future of King's Dominion perfectly. When and how long could I see all this coming together? Well, 3 stages over the course of 3 years. Since we got no major announcement yet for the 24 season, I could easily see I-305 getting a new theme and paint this off season, and possibly new paint for Racer. The following year, I could see them rebuilding the parking lot, tolls, and front entrance. And finally in 2016, that Volcano replacement finally becoming a reality. But who knows what's really in store for King's Dominion? I guess I'll have to come back and check how I did in 2026. Until then, huge shout out to King's Dominion and Cedar Fair for the great direction this park's been headed in recent years. It's the one park I never seem to have a bad visit at. Love to see it.